Okay, hey everybody, and welcome to the Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. It's Greg LaBeouf here with you, and I have, just about ripped my headset off here, have Coach Brad with me tonight. Coach Dustin is away. He will not be joining us, so maybe Brad and I can get a word in edgewise finally, hey?
I don't know who's going to come up with all the analogies.
I don't know who's doing our analogies tonight, but bear with us. We're going to try to do our best here. Looking forward to having Dustin back with us next week. But listen, tonight, it's going to be a really cool episode because this is going to be a fun one. This is a little bit, maybe a bit of a lighter topic for us. Normally, we're going really deep on all aspects of violence. And today, I actually thought what I'd like to do is go over the top 5 mistakes beginners make when training. And I really thought of this just because, listen, we all start at zero, right? All of us start at zero when we begin training. And another thing that we tend to all have in common is we all tend to make the same mistakes. It's human nature now. There's far more than 5. But I thought I would talk about the top 5, so I thought that Brad and I tonight could share a perspective from the opposite side. Listen, we've both been beginners. We are both continuously perpetual students. And at the same time, we have the privilege now of having, I've been training for over 30 years or coming up on 30 years. Brad's, 25 years, something like that. So we have the perspective of also being in the coaching role as well as the student role. And there has just been some common denominators that I see in most people. We've experienced it. We've been there. I saw those same mistakes in myself. And I thought, you know what, tonight, let's break down 5 things, 5 of the top mistakes beginners make. Because if you're listening to this and you're at the beginning of your journey or you're thinking about getting into a journey, and it doesn't matter whether it's us or somebody else, these are 5 mistakes that if you can correct these, you will grow a lot quicker. Your journey will be more enjoyable. You are far less likely to quit. All of the good things happen, and they happen synergistically to you. So that is what we're going to dive deep into tonight. So stick with us. We're going to be back in 30 seconds, and we're going to jump into the 5 top mistakes that beginners make when training. Hang with us. Hey everybody, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Greg LaBeouf, and I'm sharing insights for how I went from the victim of a brutal attempted murder to weaponizing my mind and body, mastering the tool of violence so that I can protect myself and my family from violent criminal assault, and how for the past 30 years, I've been helping good people just like you do the same. Welcome to the Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. Okay, we are back, and Brad is here with me, and we're going to talk about the top 5 mistakes that beginners make when training. Now, I said these 5 errors, these 5 mistakes, I want to talk specifically about what I'm seeing, my experience, and of course Brad's experience as coaches and teaching people the weaponization process. So some of these, the language is going to be centered around people that begin training with us, but you will be able to extrapolate it and understand and see how all beginners in any martial art, any self-defense, any personal protection, pretty much in anything, and really it can go outside of the genre, right, make these same types of mistakes. So the number one that I have, and these are in no particular order, these are just my top 5. The first one that I had down was get past like and dislike. Okay, so listen, we all have a bias, right? So we start at zero. When I came into self-defense, when I came into the weaponizing process specifically, I had a bias. Now, I had a bias because I had come from traditional martial arts, and then I had switched from traditional martial arts, and then I had gone into the boxing, kickboxing / Thai boxing, that kind of genre, the combative sport. So I had a bias. And then, I was in a violent assault. And I've talked plenty about how, the biases that I had from the training that I was doing, the expectations, what I thought violence was, what I thought of myself as a fighter, all this stuff. These are all just a bias. When I came to the weaponizing process, even though I'd been the victim of an attempted murder, I failed to defend myself. I didn't use any of my training, any of my arts, whatever. So you think that all of the bias that I had would have been destroyed. Because you're like, clearly none of it worked for me. Because violence was so different. But I still found myself at the beginning of this journey with my bias. And it's pretty easy to understand, right? Because I had invested so much of my time, so much of my energy, so much effort, right? Blood, sweat, and tears into the training, right? And not only did I invest this time, energy, effort, blood, sweat, tears, all this stuff, it formulates your self-image of who you believe yourself to be. And so we all have like and dislike. What type of music do you like? I mean, these are all part of our paradigms. And paradigms are just all of the Most times they're these unwanted gifts that we inherit from the people around us as we're growing up. Right? You grow up in a household of list that, your parents listen to blues music. You either love it or you hate it. And you formulate that at a very young age because of this bias, these paradigms that are given to you. In one part of the world, you put a piece of pie in front of somebody and they eat it, they'll spin it and eat it from the tip of the pie to the widest part of the pie, in terms of the wedge. And yet another part of the world, they spin it and they eat it from the widest part down to the narrowest part. Those are just paradigms. Why do we like it that way? Those are paradigms. Those are the bias. So in training, you have to get rid of and get beyond the like or dislike. So I got a bit more I'd like to throw down range on that. But Brad, what do you? Because again, you don't know my list. So how does the people getting rid of like or dislike? How does that resonate with you and your experience as a coach, and also your journey as a student over the years?
Yeah, you know what? It really made me think of a trap that people fall into. And obviously I'm no different, because we like to do what we're better at and what we're best at. And why this is a trap is because, is that necessarily the thing that we need to be focusing on? Or do we just like to do it because we're scared of doing something that is hard, is difficult? We might not, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. She's out of control tonight, eh?
So it's like that's where I think it's why I agree with you on it's one of the big mistakes, because it's like you could really slow down your learning because you're focusing more on, what you're good at as opposed to what you need.
100%, right? And I love that. I love hearing her in the background. This is the energy surge. If you can hear it, I'm not sure we can hear it, but you can hear Brad's young daughter in the background. But it's pre-bedtime energy she's got to burn off. So I love it. It's great. But 100%, like, we want to do what we're good at. We all want to play into our strengths. Nobody wants to be embarrassed. Nobody wants to, be the slowest guy in the room. I don't get this, and I'm not good at this, and this doesn't suit me. And here's why, and we'll just again pull it towards violence. Violence never asks. It's one of our slogans, right? And violence doesn't care. It doesn't care what you're good at. It doesn't care what you like or dislike. It doesn't care that, say, well, listen, I'm a tall guy. I got long reach and long legs, and I have great flexibility, so I happen to be, pretty darn good at kicks. Violence doesn't give a shit. It's not going to conform to you. You know what I mean? And I know people know that, but when you come into it, I've seen it so many times where somebody comes in and they go, listen, I don't have any experience in this yet. The second we start doing something, you can tell like there's a like and a dislike. And a lot of that is predicated off you can see right at what's their innate comfort level with that. And it is a very important skill set to develop, to just say, listen, whatever it is, and it's a cliche saying, but it's very true. I don't have to be great to start, but I got to start to get great. And I'll just give you an example of my personal journey. Right, I had done traditional martial arts, earned a black belt, done that for I think it was 8 years, 7 years, something like that. And then I'd gone in as a sparring partner for kickboxing, boxing, / a little bit of the Thai boxing in there, and that was probably 4 or 5 years, like as a sparring partner, like really intense period of training. So empty hands was all I knew. We did some, weapons within the traditional martial arts, but they were, again, nunchucks and, just, they weren't functional weapons. We didn't do them. We did them as part of like the forms and stuff like that. So when I got into the weaponizing process and my instructors were introducing things like sticks and knives, but introducing them for combative purposes to turbocharge attributes, I absolutely remember having the biggest pushback to that, because a stick in my hand didn't just feel foreign. It wasn't like, oh, I've never held a stick, or I've never really done a lot of knife training. It didn't just feel foreign. It actually it was like magnified. It was an intense dislike, because what happened, just the second I picked up a stick, it negated all my other skills. So it didn't just feel funny in my hands. It became blatantly obvious that I didn't know what to do. Like I didn't even know how to move all of a sudden anymore with a stick in my hands. So it was like more intense than if I just was a beginner and picked up a stick and thought, wow, this feels foreign. So I really went at it from like, I don't like them. I don't like working that part of it. I don't like them. And so, of course, when they were trying to explain to me what the benefits were, which they should never have had to do. That's one of the things, right? Like, when you go to somebody and you pay them money, why do we go to somebody and pay them money? Like, why do we seek out? Why do we spend the time and energy researching, find a coach, talk to the coach, interview the coach, make sure goals are aligned, all that stuff, make sure they got the credentials we're looking for, they've been there, done that, all that stuff. So we make the decision and we find the legitimate guy and then we pay him our money. We pay him our money, we invest our time, our effort, all that stuff, and then we question. Like, the person that you pay the money to, you should just do what they say. But this is why this is a problem. I just didn't like it because it made me feel vulnerable. Now, I wasn't consciously aware of that at the time, but that's what the truth is. And so I had a dislike. So when they were trying to explain to me, which they should never have had to do, they should have just been, Greg, this is the most expedient, functional thing that you should be doing right now to get you from A to B, to get you better. But they, as they're explaining, I'm not hearing them. And here's the extremes that my instructor went to, because he could see it had become a physiological and physical repulsion. So I could smile and pretend, but he could see that I not only did I not like it, I fucking hated it. And I remember I was coming back from training because I had to fly 3,000 miles to do to train with these guys. They were training the SEAL teams at the time. And I remember him on the last day. I was like, okay, what should I be really focusing on when I go away? And then I'll be back in 3 months. When you guys get back, I'll come back. We'll train. And it was so amazing because he goes, pick up your sticks. Picked up my sticks. Said, hold them there. And he took duct tape, and he taped my hands to the sticks. And I was kind of looking like, so what am I supposed to do with this? He goes, nothing. I just want you to hold these things. I want everywhere you go, when it's possible, I want you to have a stick or a training knife in your hands. If you're at home, you're sitting on the couch, you should have one in each hand. If you're driving, then you should just have one in one hand so you got one hand to drive with, right? But you should have these in your hands at all times. From the second you walk in the door to when you go to sleep at night, your wife should be having to take it out of your hands like a child's toy. You should have this in your hands all the time. And I'm like, okay, I get it, but what should I be doing with it? And he goes, nothing. You just need to hold it until you get past this dislike for it. Until you can just get rid of it. Now, when you come back in 3 months, you're probably not going to like it, but you're not going to dislike it. You're going to be neutral. And then we can start your journey into this. Then you're going to be open to receiving the benefits of it. But the first thing we had to do is you just had to make it a part of me. And that's what it was. When I first came home, it was a fight to pick it up and hold it as much as he wanted me to hold it. But I did it. Luckily, I was smart enough to go, okay, I'm going to listen. Ultimately, this is what he's telling me to do. I'm going to do it and trust that he has my best intentions and, at heart. And I did. So, it is super powerful if you can just, when you go into something, get past like or dislike. And don't think just arbitrarily that, oh yeah, I do that. I'm not worried about that. I listen to what they say because of your bias. Your bias is stronger than what your intellect is telling you. Oh yeah, no, for sure, I would never do that. Haha, that's silly. You have a bias. And when something comes up that goes against your bias, where you're like, no, I don't like that. I'm not good. You will push back. And that is like or dislike. That's that battle. So
well, if you're questioning it, then use your other hand. Your less dominant hand, because that's what everybody does. It's like they'll start and they're just like, okay, if it's a stick or whatever, I'll use for an example. Then, okay, put that in your other hand. It's like, people just do not want to do that because exactly what you said. Feel silly, uncomfortable, all these things. Can't I just use it on my right dominant side because that's what I'm comfortable with? And it's like, 100%. Well, how are you going to get anywhere?
Yeah, you have to be able to put this to bed very, very quickly. And again, control follows awareness. This is why I think this is just a lighthearted, fun kind of podcast. But at the same time, these are real problems. And if you can listen to these and understand these, and overcome these, you're gonna accelerate at a far faster rate, right? And again, I'll just maybe say it because the pitfalls I've seen is these 5 things that I'm talking about. They can get to the point, they can get bad enough, and people will quit. And for us, when people come to us, you're not coming as a recreation solely. You're not coming looking because you were looking for a hobby. You're not coming because you are, sat on the couch for the last 5 years and put on an extra 30 pounds. You're coming because you genuinely believe that inside of this world, there are people that will hurt you or your family if given half a chance, and you want to be prepared to defend them. So if somebody quits because of one of these 5 little things that we can change, right? Given the awareness, then that becomes that's not good, right? So the first one is get past like and dislike. Okay. The second one is try to understand this concept and always put function over form. Okay, so always put function over form. Now, obviously, if I'm suggesting you put function over form, the problem lies in the fact that when most people come in, and this is something that I think just a lot of us we've been conditioned in many aspects of our lives from a very young age, that form is one of the most important elements, right? That it's, because we'll say things like, even a teacher, like, fuck it, when you're learning to walk. And it's like, oh, well, he's not very stable yet, or he falls a lot, or he's, look at him, he's pretty wobbly, oh, he's not very balanced and stuff, right? You're in school and you're learning to write, oh, it's pretty messy, oh, watch your spelling, oh, your D's and your B's are backwards, like all of these different things. And of course, form matters, but to me, it's like this. When we're kids and we're learning to walk, okay, learning to walk, learning to sit up, whatever it is, the youngest thing, we are not good at it first. Form is not the most important thing. A child that learns to sit up and it's pretty wobbly, but from that wobbly, it falls over, kind of lands on its hands and knees and does a very rudimentary crawl. It moves from one spot to the other. There's some function in that. As a kid, we're just driven to like, well, we want to explore our environment. We want to move around. We take a Cheerio and we miss our fucking mouth. Like you miss, anyone that's got kids understands there is 1,000 Cheerios on the floor for every 10 that hit the pie hole, right? Like they miss far more than they hit, but at the end of the day, that they get Cheerios in their mouth, they don't starve to death. And so to me, that's function over form. What do you know as a parent? Barring any type of medical issue, with 1,000% certainty that eventually it's not going to be 1,000 Cheerios on the floor and 10 in the mouth. It'll be 100 Cheerios in the mouth and only, 300 on the floor. Okay? What I'm getting at is that form will come, right? Form will come. I remember having going into a teacher, parent-teacher conference. I think my oldest daughter was in grade 2 or grade 3, and they talked about her reading, and there's assessed the reading levels and said she's a little bit behind for her grade level, and this and that, and they talked this but I remember that the way that the teacher was explaining it to me, I immediately when we left, I remember looking at Christy and just being like, man, like the overwhelming feeling that I got is that we have, like, she's never going to get this. Like, this is a problem, and if we don't address it, she's never going to learn to read. Now, I'm not commenting on the teacher part of it. I'm saying, like, she's probably trying to make sure, like, what type of parents are you? Because your child would benefit at this moment from extra help. Just because if she is on par in her reading or above, if she gets that help, it's going to make life easier for her as she continues to get older. So I get that, right? But I'm just saying that the feeling wasn't like, this is not a problem. Like, yes, we could use some work, but it was the feeling like she's never going to do it. And I remember leaving that, I thought, listen, do we really think that, like, in the next year or two, she's not going to, like, at 10 years old, she won't know how to read? Like, is that really what we're thinking about here? Like, it's like, again, it's almost if you went to the doctor and your kid's a year old, and when they walk, they're wobbly. And everybody's like, I don't know, man. Like, we got a problem here. And it's like, well, no, we don't really have a problem. Like, they're, are they a little bit behind? Well, behind who? Behind what? Now, again, I'm take out any actual medical issues. Some kids walk, my youngest, our oldest, was walking at 10 or 11 months, wobbly, but walking, and solid by a year. And our youngest was 8 months and fucking booking it, like on everything with different stability. Some kids don't walk till they're a year and a half or more. The point is, you go ahead now, they're 10 years old, they're all walking. So function, to me, in training is very important. But so much of us come in, and when somebody doesn't look pretty, like it doesn't feel pretty, and I'll say this and then I'll pass it over to you, but how many guys have we trained that when we're showing them something, we're demoing something and showing them the core immutable concepts of what we're doing, and then they begin to do it, they stop, express some sort of frustration and go, well, it doesn't look like you look. It doesn't feel like what, like, I'm watching you do it, and like, I'm definitely not doing it that way. And I'm like, well, you're day 3, I'm year 30. If we looked the same, you probably wouldn't be here. Yeah, you wouldn't be paying me. Right? So function over form.
Yeah, and just to kind of what you finished off with is exactly where my head went to, except just in a little bit of a different way, is because when we talk about function, what I've seen a lot is just that when we're drilling with them and we're getting them to execute on what we happen to be working in that moment, is if it doesn't feel right or if they perceive that it doesn't look the right way, then what they do is they end up stopping and they want to actually start over. And so when you're talking about functionalizing over form, it's like, no, you cannot stop, because that's just it. If you stop, then you're putting the ultimate importance on to say, well, yeah, now your form wasn't good there, so we should stop, we should clean that up, and then, put function later. Say, no. It's like, through functionalizing, you will grow. Well, you're functionable, and that's the main key, right? So yeah. It's like if you're form driven, you're going to stop, and again, it's going to slow your progress.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and you can see where people get demoralized.
Of course.
Like if you're trying to hit this standards you have in your head of form or perfection or whatever it is, and again, a lot of places put emphasis on that, then it can become very demoralizing, because really nice form, even moderate form, it takes time. It takes time. It takes practice. It takes that repetition. And if you feel like you're failing at that, because you're like, well, then what's my success? Like, what's the immediate success? I got a little bit better tonight, but I still suck. Yeah. Right? Whereas function is an immediate success. Function's always an immediate success. Right? And how is that? Because the analogy we love to use is if you put the puck in the net, I don't care what it looks like. A goal's a goal. Like if you're talking about hockey, you put the puck in the net, it doesn't matter how ugly it was. You got the job done. So I want to just make one more point on this, and we can kind of do it together here. But I think like when we say, okay, function is an immediate success. If we're having somebody do something, maybe it's throwing an elbow. Let's just say something very basic, simple, a tool, throwing an elbow. And so you show them, okay, here's a horizontal elbow, there's a vertical elbow, here's the different ways you can do it. Here's the body mechanics, which is the form, the weight transfer, all that stuff. But what we're always doing is, in addition to just teaching like the body mechanics, the weight transfer, the placement, actually follow through, the emotional content, all that stuff, we are always talking about why. What is the end goal? Like, yes, there's this elbow, but what do you want the elbow to do? Like, there's how you do it, right? How you do it with perfect form. But then there's like, why are you doing it? And you're like, oh, that's to relay a specific type of injury. Okay, and from a specific type of range. So for a specific type of moment within combat. So in that, you could say, well, functionally, how can we create this injury? How else can we relay this injury? And what happens is you start to give people the freedom to become, and it's a very powerful word for us, but it's to become cunning. Because when you're cunning, right away, you start going, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And that, to me, allows this person, because how many times, Brad, have we been doing something with somebody, you show them the elbow, yes, we're working it, we're trying to get their mechanics right, the form, we're helping them with that, and then we say, okay, now just throw it, yeah, just do it, now stop trying to do it, and just do it. And then all of a sudden they do something, and we're like, yes, and they're like, what? Like, that was not really, that wasn't, I don't even know if I'd call that an elbow, really, I don't know what that kind of was, but you're like, I'll tell you what it was. Oh, it was fucking ugly, but you just put the fucking puck in the net. That would relay injury. You were cunning. It gave them permission to go outside of that, right? And how many times have we seen that work for people? in the beginning, right? It's again, like a baby figuring out how to get from point A. They got all the way across the room and up on the couch, but they just didn't do it with perfect form of walking and climbing and sitting and all that other stuff, right?
Well, we often see people's success well long before they do. Like,
Yes.
oh, because they're in it, and they're like, oh, we're always our own worst critic. We've all done this, right? And then you're like, no, do you understand what you just did? It's like, yeah, but it didn't look good, and these types of things, exactly what we're talking about, or it didn't feel good. It's like, yeah, but you did it. You were successful with it. Like, you used that. You weren't just standing in one spot and had no functionalism at all. It was you applied something that you learned, and so people are very easy to pass over their successes because they're their own worst critic. So
that was really, really well said, that we see people's success long before they do, because that's 100% correct. And that happens because we ourselves as coaches, when we're working with new people, put function over form. I don't grade people by their form. I'm not saying I don't, I know that form is just a byproduct, time and effort, and it will come. And it's just like taking, it's like making a sword or making a knife. You fold the metal, you bang the metal. You fold the metal, you bang the metal. Long before that becomes a polished, razor sharp edge or blade, it could definitely be used to stab and slash people with enough efficiency to kill them, with enough function to kill them. Right, so we don't have to wait until you have the 700 folded samurai sword, whatever, right? So 100%. So function over form. So the first mistake we talked about was get past like or dislike. The second was function over form, and the third one is consistency will always beat intensity. Okay, and so what do I mean by that? In the beginning, people are jacked. Right? You see somebody at the beginning of a hike, they often look very different than the middle or the end of the hike, right? So in the beginning, when people are excited, they're like, I found this thing. I'm interested in this. I mean, everything is at its peak state. And so what happens is there's this intensity that people often want to dive into it with, right? So it's like, how many days a week do you want to train? I want to train 9 days a week. And you're like, well, there's only 7 days in the week. I want to train 9 days a week. And you're just like, I love it. I love the enthusiasm, but let's just notch it down a little bit. I want to train 8 hours a day. Every waking moment I want to go into training. Now, me and you can both attest to the fact that there are times, periods in your life, aka before kids, before marriage, right? When you're sick, all of a sudden, where you can definitely bring a different intensity to your training, right? You can do it more often with greater frequency for longer periods of time. However, I am talking, and I was that guy. I was training, my whole life was training through my 20s and my 30s. I didn't get married and have kids till much later in life because there was no space in my life other than training. But I'll tell you what, consistency always beats intensity. And I learned that very early on because my instructors, my mentors, forced me to see it. Because I saw so many guys that were jumping in with an intensity, like a massive intensity. I would be down there, living there for 3-4 months with these guys training, and I would see guys that were there, and they were there 24/7. These guys were obsessive and there. And I remember thinking, holy shit. I would go away for 3-4 months, come back, and almost every time, 80 to 90% of those guys that were that intense were gone. I think the longest I've ever seen somebody with that type of intensity really last, other than a real off baseline guy, was about 2 years at that type of intensity. And yes, you can get good in those 2 years, but those good in 2 years is nothing to good over 30 years, over 3 decades. And I've lasted this long because of the power of consistency.
And you could see it. Like, I know that we've talked and we've seen it multiple times. When someone comes in with that intensity, you know what type of client you have.
Yep.
Because you're like, okay, well, they're not going to be around that long. Yep. Like, they may be around for a while and have some of that intensity, like even the example you said with the guy for 2 years. But it's like, it almost seems like when they have that intensity, they're in it. But should anything take them out, even just a little bit, it's like the whole thing explodes, right? Because it's that pendulum we talk about. It's so far on the one side that if it starts to get traction and swings, it goes completely to the opposite side, and things just fall off, and things deteriorate, and the whole world blows up. And then it's just like you don't have the consistent tempo to have life moments happen where you can, roll with the punches, so to speak, and come back to it. If it takes you out, it's like you're gone, you're done.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, so
Yep.
we've always known you get a guy that he's like, yeah, he doesn't come to everything, but he comes to 65, 75% of everything that we do. Is like, oh, this guy's going to be around way longer.
Everything you just said is the root of this problem, and I'm not going to reiterate all because you said it so well. But that the pendulum analogy is massive, and you're 100% right. And the only thing I would try to add is another angle on that is, again, it's like, why is it that way? Because when you come in with this intensity, and maybe it's because you have that time, maybe you're in that space in your life where you're like, I don't have a girlfriend, I don't have a wife, I don't have kids, I work, and you know what, I don't want to go to the bar with my friends, so like this, I have the time, and that's great. But when they go all in like that, now remember, you can train 7 days a week, but you have to have the awareness that it's not the intensity, it's the consistency that you're achieving, that you're going. That's the goal. Because like you said, what happens is it creates this, well, when I train all in. So like you said, when something pulls you out of that, you go out, I'm going to take care of this, put this fire out, I'm going to address this. And then the second I get through that, then I'm all back in, baby, because you have created this conditioned thing in you that it's all or nothing.
Yeah.
Because, and that's the danger. And that's exactly what you really painted that picture well. That is the danger. If you were just going, listen, right now, like this week, you go, oh man, I trained 7 days this week. How awesome. And then the next week you train 1 or 2. But your mindset is, yes, but consistency beats intensity every time. Then you don't feel bad when you miss. You go, Jesus, you don't go, I missed 6 days of training this week. God, Joe was there and Hank was there and Sally was there. They did 6 days and I only did 1. And then all of a sudden there's guilt. And we have seen that training guilt or shame, whatever. We have seen that. I've seen that. That's killed more, men than any violent criminal ever has. Add it all together. That has killed them, right? Same as getting a girlfriend or getting married, and getting pregnant and having kids. Those are the 3 things that kill more men when it comes to training and weaponized preparing than any violent criminal ever has, because of what we're talking about. People don't understand the power of consistency.
Can you hear me okay? I think my internet's going to be in chopper.
No, I can hear you. Yep. Looks good.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, the one thing that I put one little caveat on is that when that intensity comes in, someone comes in with that intensity and they're like, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay. It's different when someone says, hey, listen, like I'm moving or I'm going on deployment and I got 4 months.
Yeah.
And they hit that intensity for 4 months.
Yes.
But that's intentional. So when you have that intention behind having that intensity, because you know that your time frame is actually, I only got 4 months of this to be with you guys, and then I'm elsewhere, then that's a different scenario. But it's like, I'm going to operate this way for the rest of my life. Yeah. Dude, I fell in that trap.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? It was a hard thing for me when I got married and had kids. It's like, I was, I had to find that balance, right?
Yeah. You have to double down on the consistency, right? And that was a great caveat, right? Because there's always the exception to the rule. And like you said, when you're under the time constraints, then you got to get shit done. Then it's going to have a different training tempo. But 100%. And my last point with this is just, we understand it when it comes to the power of money. You have a child and your child's born, and at 1 year old, you start putting, $30 into the bank account for them every single month from the time they're 1 year old to the time they turn 18. And I mean, I don't know the math on that right now, But I do know that by the time, at 18 you stop doing that, by the time they get even to 30 years old, just with how that's going to compound in interest, even though at 18 you don't ever put another cent into that, the dividends, the result of that is going to be phenomenal. And that's the same thing that we have to have. And again, I did it. You did it. Dustin's done it. We have a lot of guys that they show up. But we always tell people that you're putting in the consistent work. And whether that happens to be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 things in 1 week, and then the next week it's one thing. Or you go, you know what, man, I got this week. I did 7 things this week, showed up for 7 days, and now I'm gone out of town for 3 weeks. I'm doing a little bit of training on my own, obviously, but I won't be back. I'll see you guys in 3 weeks. Now you go in the span of 6 months, missing 3 weeks is significant. No different than if I put $20 into a bank account every week or $10 a week. In 6 weeks, that's nothing. So people would quit. But when you take a training career and go, well, don't look at it at 6 months. Let's go out now to 5 years. That 3 weeks is nothing. Go out 10 years. And a missed month or two is nothing, right? Nothing. So long as we've been consistent throughout those periods, right? And that's the power of it. So you got to compound your interest and compound your investment into training, and just remember that consistency always beats intensity, right? So have the passion, have the drive, but right from day one, just go, you know what my goal is? My goal is to just be consistent. Put in the consistent work. Don't worry about intensity, and don't worry about that people just, like I said, the pendulum will swing back, and those people are often gone. They have no balance in what they're doing. Okay, so we're doing the top 5 things, mistakes beginners make when training. Number 1 was get past like or dislike. Number 2 was put function over form. Number 3 was consistency beats intensity, and now number 4 is be happy, not satisfied. Okay, now why I added this one in there again, and this ties a little bit into the function over form, but it is different, right? Be happy, not satisfied. I know a lot of people, and you've seen it, Brad, and this is why I loved what you said when you said that we tend to see people's successes before they do. Well, I'm just going to modify your quote a little bit and say, we tend to be far happier for people with their progress and where they're at than they ever are. You know what I mean? It's like, people have a real hard time being in the moment and just going, I am exactly the fuck where I should be. I'm exactly where I fucking should be. You know what I mean? Like you stop comparing yourself to other people and just be like, you know what? For the work that I'm putting in, the consistency I'm bringing it to, the effort, all of this stuff, I am exactly where I need to be. And so be happy with that. I remember my instructors having to tell me more than one time, hundreds, if not thousands of times, Greg, you've got to start getting off on how badass you're getting, how badass you're becoming, how badass you are. And they weren't doing this to try to say, dude, you got to have an inflated ego. No, they were just saying that, listen, think about where you were 6 months ago. Like, are you a better warrior today than you were 6 months ago? In all honesty, I'm not asking you if you're the toughest man in the world and the greatest. Are you better? And my answer was always like, yeah, absolutely. And they say, of course you are. Why? Because you're putting in the consistent work, because you're showing up, because you're doing the work, because you're not complaining and questioning. You're, all of these things that we're talking about, you're just doing it. And so, yeah, you're better. But you got to be happy with that. Because yes, I know we all have these goals, right? And it's great to have goals and look into the future and say, yes, but you know what? What I'm striving for is here. What I'm striving for, I still have not obtained yet. And that may be true, but what you have obtained, where you are, is part of getting to that. You can't get to that where you want to be without having accomplished what you are today. And and I had to hear that many, many times. Because again, it's like, and it's easy to go, well, I'm so driven and I'm relentless, and again, to start trying to bring this intensity to it and be like, I won't be happy until. And what we all know is that whatever that goal is, whatever you're saying, when I get this, when I achieve that, I'll be happy. We all know, but by the time you actually even get close to achieving that, you've already pushed that goal further out. And so by the time you get it, that no longer satisfies you. And for most people, they barely acknowledge it on their radar. Yeah, no, I didn't know what I was talking about back then. Now I want to be this because there's somebody better. Somebody's got more money. Somebody's got bigger house. Somebody's got better things. Like, it's always this shit. Now, I don't believe people should be satisfied. We have infinite potential. Life is amazing. We should be like hungry. I like that. I hope at 80 and 90, I have goals. I'm hungry and wanting to do things and achieve things and learn things and become things. But every second of this, I want to be in the moment and I want to be happy with what I'm doing. And I want to even be happy with what I'm not doing, like the failures, the struggles. You gotta be happy, but not satisfied. And that will help you to just be consistent and not burn out with this, kind of a flash in the pan intensity that may burn hot for a few years and then dies out, right? We can't hear you. You're on mute.
Yeah.
Boom. There you go.
Yeah, there we go. I don't know if there's a ton that I would actually add to that because, like you summed it up pretty well, obviously. And, I think the only thing that comes into mind is that, like, there's always, you're coming back. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're continuing to grow. I know that if I had a training session that I'm like, I wasn't super satisfied with that. It's like, well, the beauty and the fortunate thing that I have right now is time, right? I'd come back tomorrow and I could try again, and I could improve and just keep working, and it's a process. You can't, to the day that we could just download things right into our brain and be like the Matrix, and it's like all of a sudden you're weaponized and you could do all this thing. Like, you got to work it and you got to put that work in. And that's part of, I think people like underestimate how impactful that part of the journey of putting the work in actually molds you into that future self that you're chasing so much. And it's like, yeah, you want to be there so quick. And it's like, I'm not happy until I'm there. It's like, yeah, but what you're doing right now is the man or woman that you're chasing. This is how that person comes to fruition. Right. So, I just think that it's kind of an overlooked one out of the four that we've talked so far. But definitely important.
Yeah. And again, you nailed a really good part of it. We've heard this in many other facets. It's the journey, not the destination. And again, you said it. It's the journey that makes the man. It's not the destination. And one of our favorite sayings, mantras, is work the process because the process works. And if you look at that, when you say work the process, look how many of these things it works into. Work the process. It's the journey. When you recognize that, you're happy. Be happy. You don't have to be satisfied. Be happy with the fact that you have the opportunity to do this and that you are doing that. The consistency, not the intensity. Work the process. Just be consistent in the process because the process will work. You can divorce yourself from the end result because you're doing, when you are consistently working a process, you work it consistently to the point that for you not to achieve the end result would be inconceivable because you've just done it so much, right? Function over form. Again, just be happy with it. The function is there. The form will come. Look at the result you are able to produce today. A guy that trains very first day is able to produce a result that he wasn't able to 24 hours earlier. Now, right away, most people will judge that to some standard of form. Well, no, but it's uglier. But could I really do it? Could somebody stop me from? It's like, well, of course, somebody, you know what I mean? It's like they just get all caught up in all of these different things. So that work the process, it's the journey, not the destination. Be happy, but never be satisfied. It is a very powerful one to use for sure. So just recapping, the first of the top 5 mistakes beginners make when training. Get past like or dislike was the first one. The second was function over form. The third was consistency beats intensity every time. The fourth one was be happy, not satisfied. And the final one that I think we'll share for tonight is, and this might seem at first glance a little bit specific to us, and maybe it is, but I think we can adapt it and people will learn. But it's train as a warrior, not a martial artist. And I'll just explain real quick why this is such a mistake thing that I see people make. And it's a little interconnected to, be happy, not satisfied, all this kind of stuff. But A lot of people, when they come in, the thing that separates, I found the very best that I've ever met. The very best that I've ever met. The toughest, just the best. They all have one thing in common. And I have tried to really nurture this in myself. And it's now part of my core being. But train as a warrior, not an artist, means this. The warriors will do the basics over and over and over without ever getting bored, without ever feeling like they've seen it all, done it all, know it all, like they have no room to improve. Like they do not tire of the foundational tools and strategies and tactics that you are going to live and die by. That is what they train. And they understand that there is an infinite amount of layers to be peeled back on that. You can consistently and constantly sharpen and put a better edge on that blade. And that is the biggest thing. Whereas the martial artist, now remember, this is just a generalized symbolism. A martial artist often wants the new. What's next? What's next? I've seen this. What's next, right? And the reason we say that is because if you look at it, when you join a martial art from white to yellow to blue to orange to red to brown to purple, whatever their belt configuration happens to be, and then of course the white belt has stripes and every belt has stripes and this and this and this, information is constantly being thin sliced, divided, segregated, and fed to you one pellet at a time. And so we get into this thing of like, what's next? I got that mastered, that what's next. Got that mastered, that what's next. Got that mastered, what's next. Oh, I got a toolbox. I'm always adding tools to my toolbox. Well, warriors and people that are interested in function and are going to operate in, life and death environments, we talked about this last week in the podcast, need to decrease their reaction time model, not increase. So it's a daily decrease, not a daily increase. Right, and that process of simplicity it's an amazing thing, but most businesses are not structured that way. Because someone says, well, if you show them all of the best stuff right off the bat, imagine showing somebody all the black belt stuff. So, well, this is theoretically the highest level, blah 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 blah. Then why would they stick around? What would be an incentive? Because you can't just have them repeating this stuff for 20 years. And the reality is, no, you never repeat. You constantly hone. You constantly sharpen. You constantly refine. You constantly demand more of your attributes. You constantly demand, you know what I mean? Like you're executing at a higher level. So, you look at a sport fighter versus, let's say, someone like a traditional martial artist. A sport fighter, a boxer, kickboxer, Thai boxer, they will keep things pretty simple. You got your jabs, your crosses, your hooks, your uppercuts, and they work them and they hit them the heavy bag, they hit them on, the pad work, then they spar, they put in their conditioning training. But it's a more simplistic basic, and they come in as a fighter, and it's like, all right, what are we doing today? Well, what do you mean, what are we doing today? The same shit we did yesterday, but only better. You get what I mean? They're not constantly going, well, what's a new punch? What's a new thing? What's a new technique? What's a new strategy? What's a new tactic? Like, the goal is not to constantly pile more and more stuff on. And so when people come in, my point with this is I can tell when I get someone in within the first, couple of privates, I can tell what lights them up. And because when I come in and I show someone a strategy or a tactic and we work it and I introduce it and then we start flight timing it. And then they come, then they're sitting there. The ones that stop and go, okay, like I can practice that some more at home, or I can do that a bit more later. Like, and they look at me as if to say, what's next? Now what? And then there's the ones that don't ever look over saying, what's next? They just keep working it. They keep flight timing it. They keep asking questions about it. And they keep doing it until I tell them, okay, and stop. Okay, we're going to leave that for a sec. Now we're going to do this. Or, okay, now I'm going to have you do that a different way to bring out different things. And then when they come in, the other side of that is when the next private's coming up, I don't get the text message or the phone call saying, hey, what are we working today? because they want to know, like, should I be excited to come to class? Are we doing something new, doing something different? And it's like, because the last 2 classes, you kind of had me doing the same stuff. And it's like, yeah, I did. And you're going to do it again today. Like, I don't know. We'll see where you're at. We'll see what kind of a day we're having. We'll see how we are functionally. Like, you know what I mean? Like, get into learn to love the core stuff. Learn to fall in love with taking something. You know, it's like, you know, you ever go out and eat chicken wings with somebody? I'm going to throw an analogy in. This goes out to you, Dustin. But you go out and eat chicken wings with somebody, and you see a guy rifle a chicken wing through his mouth, throw it on the plate, and half the meat is still on the goddamn bone. And you're looking at it being like, what a waste. Then you go out with another buddy, and that one chicken wing is in their mouth for 6.5 hours, and I mean, they suck the marrow out of that fucking thing. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, that's eating like a warrior. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to get every fucking drop of marrow out of this wing before I move to the next wing. You know, and the other guy's like, fuck it, where's the next one? I'm still hungry. No shit, you're hungry. You have the meat still on those bones. Right? So there's my analogy. Dustin would be happy. But
wife.
What's that?
I'm sending this portion to my wife.
I'm sending this portion to my wife. Yeah. So that's the final one is train like a warrior. I remember one time I'd been down there and I was doing my own training. I was living down there at the time. I was doing my training. So I had been training for, I don't know, we did like a 4 or 5 hour day, whatever it was. And then I remember that they had a group of guys coming in. These soldier guys were coming in from Italy. And so I was going to, you know, my time was done. They were going through a bunch of stuff. And I was like, oh, where are these guys at in their development? Because there was other people there training with us. And my instructor said, no, they're like ground zero, man. Like, I got to start from the basics and teaching them all this stuff. And it was Paul and Tom were going to be doing it. And I remember like, okay, well, I'm going to run grab something to eat then. And they're like, okay, yeah, we'll see you tomorrow. And so I went with this group. We had a quick bite to eat. And then I said, okay, I'm going to head back. And they're like, oh, what do you mean? Like, let's go. Like, we're going to head back to the hotel, hit the pool. We'll have a couple of drinks, whatever and stuff. And I'm like, no, I'm going back. And I went back, and I didn't go back to help. I just went back, and I just grabbed the lawn chair, and I just sat on the side, and I watched. And I remember Paul was teaching. Tom walked over, sat down to me, and he goes, oh, did you go get something? I said, yeah, I got something to eat. And he goes, oh, where are the guys? I'm like, oh, they doing whatever. And he's like, well, why did you come back? And I said, you kidding me? Like, Paul's teaching elbows tonight? Paul's teaching headbutts? Like, he's like, well, you've seen all this stuff. It's like, you know this shit. You've seen him teach it 100 times. I said, I haven't seen him teach these guys it. You know what I mean? And remember, he looked at me and he said, that's why you'll still be doing this. Like, that's why you're going to be good. And he said, I don't have to be here. And he goes, I'm here for the same fucking reason you are. He goes, like, anytime I get to see Paul teach the basics, the core stuff, I never miss that opportunity. Why? Because I'm at a different level now. And now when I watched him teach it to me the first time, I didn't know, I couldn't see the subtle nuances of how he carried his weight or how his foot moved out a little bit or how his head was angled, or I missed that inflection in his voice that gave me a deeper insight into his mindset and the mentality. And he's like, guys like us never get sick of the basics. And in that moment, I was like, that's true, man. And then at that point, the second I become aware of it, I tripled down on it because now I knew why, like, you know, I knew why. I thought at the time maybe I just like was being a keener, but it was more than that. I never get sick of deep diving into stuff. Go deep. Don't be shallow. Go deep. So train like a warrior. Love the work. Enjoy that process.
Yeah, I think just maybe a few points to add just from my own perspective is that, you know, like everything is the basics. Everything is the foundation. Everything is always that laser focus on what's the purpose? Why am I here? The only time that I'm going to say deviate and go outside of that, just for a lack of a better word for me right now, but it's like, is to make those things better. Right. Yep. So it's like you do it's like, if that's what you need, that's what you do. And then say, oh, but now you need this. This is going to make that better. And that, like, for me, thinking about even just listening to the story and thinking about, you know, my journey and other people's journeys and stuff like that, is like, yeah, like, that's what it's all about, is to get the shit that you live and die, like, that you live and die by, get that the best that you possibly can. And there's ways to improve that, taking the express elevator, which we've talked in previous podcasts, that are definitely going to expedite that process, but only when you need that particular element. And the other thing I would just say is, like, if you're looking back and you're listening to this podcast, these are all extremely connected things.
100%.
You know, like the first one, get past like and dislike. If you don't like the basics, if that's not part, if you're like, yeah, I've seen it, I've done it, like you're missing the point, right?
Yeah.
But these are all super connected.
100%. And just, again, the end one, train like a warrior, not a martial artist. Don't worry about what's new, what's next, all that stuff. But it's all intent. Everything you do with intent. And I'm one of our core sayings is context determines content. Why are you training for? For me, I think my love of the core, the basics, to just work that process came because, again, I was the victim of an attempted murder. I almost lost my life to violence. So I don't care I'm not distracted by shiny objects. I'm not distracted by, fancy moves and flying arm bars. And I'm not impressed. Yeah. I'm not impressed by, I don't even like watching fights in movies because I hate the Hollywood stigmatism and what that represents and stuff. I love functionalism. I love the simplicity. I love just what works. So, anyways, that's huge for me, and in what we do, and I think it just benefits anybody. Master the basics, and I don't even like the word master. Like, be a lifelong student of the basics. Know them inside and out, deeper and better than any of your contemporaries. Like, just that'll set you apart. That'll set you apart in and of itself. So. Okay, so we just covered over the top 5 things. There's more, but these were 5 things that I felt. Again, I see people. I made these mistakes. I've seen many people come in and make these mistakes, and unfortunately, 1 or 2 of these things, or a combination of them, whatever, people end up, they go the way of the dodo. They leave training because of these things. And one of the things that I want to point out is that all of these things are well within each of our own control. We don't need anything external. We don't need somebody to do something for us. We don't need the stars to align. We don't need to get lucky. We just need to look at these things and then have some self-awareness, right? So the first one, again, no particular order, but the first one that we did was get past like or dislike. Well, that's your bias, and you have the ability to control your bias. So get past your like or dislike. Function over form. In the beginning, recognize and set a goal of being functional, getting the puck in the net, and don't worry about form. Trust that the form will come through the work, through the process. Number 3 was consistency beats intensity. This is actually what will help you get the form, right? While you're being functional, while you're getting past the like or dislike, just recognize, be consistent. Think long term. Don't think of training in like this rush to get 6 months, 8 months, a year, 2 years, where you're like, oh, I'm a bad son of a bitch and I only been training 2 years. Think long term. Play the long game. The 4th one was be happy, not satisfied. Okay, that's a real different thing to be able to accomplish. Be happy with where you're at. The journey makes the man. Enjoy the journey. Work the process because the process works. So be happy, but nobody's ever saying you got to be satisfied. But get off on where you're at. A day in, a week in, you are a different motherfucker than you were a day or a week ago. Get off on that, right? Not in an egotistical, braggadocious way, but in an internal, real-world self-confidence. Feel fucking good about what you're doing. Be happy with it. And the final one was train like a warrior, not a martial artist, meaning fall in love with the basics. Right? Go deep on the basics. It's not repeating things. You know what I mean? It's flight timing things. It's deep diving things. It's educating these things to a level that most people are never going to go. There's a saying that goes, there's never going to be a crowd on the extra mile. The extra mile is when people do the basics. It's more fucking running. It's more up and down the fucking hill. It's more up and down the stairs. It's more putting in the reps into the tools and the flight time and the learning and listening and attending lectures and seeing it from the beginning over and over and over again. That's the fucking extra mile, right? There's never going to be a crowd there. Fall in love with that stuff. All of it's in your control. And if you do these, if you make these 5 changes, right, you are going to have, I can guarantee it, you will have a long, you will have a productive training career, meaning that you will be the type of human being, the type of man that has it within their capability to be a life-saving force in a dark, critical moment. You will be that protector for your family, right? You will be your own fucking bodyguard. You will be there, and you will be the thing that saves innocent lives in dark, critical moments. So I guarantee it. Because if you work the process works, right? So we eliminate the traps that would take us out of the process, and then thereby guaranteeing that we achieve the results. So, all right, guys. Brad, anything to add in on the top 5?
Nope. I think it's just great for people to hear.
Yeah, I think this was a fun one, right? This was kind of lighthearted. This was fun, but yet very, super, super important, right? So if you got some benefit out of these, then that's great. We're happy to share. Again, Dustin will be back with us next week. Thanks, Brad, for your time as usual. Thank you guys for listening. Please don't forget to like, comment, share. That's how we grow this. It takes less than 60 seconds to make sure you're subscribing, turn on notifications. Leave us a comment. Leave us a review on your podcast, wherever you get that from. 5 stars guarantees that we're going to reach more ears, get more listeners. We're slowly and steadily growing this. We're doing it organically. Our entire mission is not to sell shit to anybody. It's to document the journey of how we went from zero to weaponized or zero to formidable, how we became weaponized men, taking responsibility for our life, liberty, freedom, and security, and that of our families and other innocent people. We need more good men to join the cause, to join the movement on any level with us or other people. But it's time to take responsibility for your right to life, liberty, freedom, and security. Stand up, be heard, be accounted for. And if we can play any role in that, we are happy to do it. That is our mission. So thank you guys so much. Stay safe, stay weaponized. And until next time, we'll chat again soon, everybody. Have a great night.